Welcome back to Beyond the Line of Scrimmage, everybody. I'm your host, Minx here, joined by my partner, as usual, Coach Boar. Man, it has been a long waited debut for us this season. It is week 11. We've got playoff rankings. We've got big-time matchups this weekend with huge implications down the road that, honestly, I think are being heavily overlooked by the lack of high-end hype from the rest of the world. But guys, it is college football season. We're ready to lock in. Coach Boy, I'll let you take it away with what you got to say.
The committee has decided the fate of the college football hopefuls. We are here to take a look, take a gander, decide potentially where the easiest route is, of course, with the new 12-team playoff that will be this year. So these are the official rankings as of November 13th. We got Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, and Indiana rounding out the top five. That is 4 Big Ten opponents. You mentioned earlier, it is kind of hard to follow this graphic because there's so many numbers next to each other. Once the rankings come out for the playoffs, they should just make that the ranking. I think the point of this show tonight, at least for the first episode back, is that we should kind of talk about what we think, what are our early impressions of current teams in there. And I mean, obviously the big story is Georgia being the first team out. Especially after that loss against Ole Miss. They're in a do-or-die situation this weekend with Tennessee. That'll be at home. I think it might be a night game.
Oh, it is. It's a 6:30 kick.
The big debate recently has been why Ohio State has freaking 6 big noon kickoffs in a row. Nobody wants that. Okay, Big Ten, we're looking at you. Okay, What are your early impressions of this playoff as it stands?
I've got a lot of opinions.
Okay.
I've got a lot of opinions about individual teams specifically. Overall, just looking at the bracket right here, I mean, just let's go through the first round games. Is there anything that's really intriguing to me? That Ole Miss Penn State matchup, the defensive front of Ole Miss versus that Penn State offense. What can Penn State actually do against an elite defensive front? That'll be fun to watch. Notre Dame, Tennessee. Notre Dame is a team that has been just heavily underlooked ever since their loss to Northern Illinois. And I think that they're honestly in improvement mode. There's a lot of stuff here. Boise, Ohio State. I mean, we saw Boise State go where they were playing in Autzen, right? That was in Autzen.
Yep.
Went into Autzen, only lost by a field goal. Grant, that was one of the first 3 weeks of the season, but we saw Ohio State do that exact same thing with almost the exact pretty similar scoreline to that there. I mean, that could be cinema. That could be cinema. And then don't even get me started about Indiana, man. My love story. Look, I don't care if they lose next week. Keep it close, please. That's all I ask for. There's a couple teams. I mean, with those auto buys, and that's where I kind of get a little weary right now. I mean, Miami. I mean, I look at that as an extremely favorable draw for that 5 seed in Ohio State. I've heard a lot of talk about the 5 seed almost gets an easier draw because they get the 12 seed in the first round. They get the worst automatic qualifier or the auto bid, and then I mean they're pretty much in a sense they're guaranteed a semifinal shot. And presumably against Oregon is just what people would think, power rankings, all that sorts of stuff there. I mean, that's also a thing that you've got to look at with the new playoff format is how can you actually truly balance it out to whereas, that 5 seed doesn't have such a easy or manageable path to it there. I don't know if that's even be possible, but that's just my thinking of it.
See, the thing for me is you're talking about Notre Dame. They got one good win on their schedule, and that is at A&M. A&M not even in this graphic. Okay, that's number one. Number two, Tennessee's defense would smoke out Notre Dame's offense. Okay, that's number two. As far as automatic bids go, BYU, shaky game against Utah. I honestly thought Utah was going to pull that game out. BYU gets a flag for them that keeps them in the game. They drive down the field, kick the game-winning field goal. It's tough because Miami also, they've been on the brink of death, it seems, the whole season. In terms of games they've had to come back in. The Cal game comes to mind. They're definitely one mistake away from being out of this thing, and they definitely have to win out in order to stay in.
I think really the beneficiary of that Miami team potentially, not imploding, but if Miami slips up again, SMU is in the driver's seat of that.
Yep.
And SMU is a team that we were both very, very high on. We thought that they would sneak into the playoff at the beginning of the season or even before the beginning of the season. It was early in February is when we started making
Yeah.
those predictions. And SMU, I mean, their only loss is early in the season to BYU, who is currently 9-0.
Another thing I'm looking at, Indiana, Alabama. Obviously, Alabama going to Bloomington. What a different, when we expected the playoff to be here, we were thinking, okay, a team goes to Penn State, whiteout. You never really thought Alabama would be going to Indiana. And obviously, barring Indiana's health after next week, are they going to be even in the playoff next week? I mean, I would think it depends on how the game goes.
Absolutely, it depends on if they lose and it's close, what does the committee actually make of that there? I mean,
Yeah.
they're a team that, granted, I mean, everyone says, "Oh, look at their schedule. Look at their schedule." I mean, Joe Cloud a couple weeks back, I mean, he looked at Michigan and Georgia's strength of schedule the previous season, and then compared it to Indiana, and you saw a lot of similarities with that. Indiana, for the most part, has been blowing a good amount of teams out. Their toughest game that they played last week against Michigan, they had some slip ups in the second half, but I mean, still, they looked fairly poised in that game. I mean, look at that playoff path. Let's say BYU, Oregon, Texas win out. Miami slips up. It's either SMU or Boise State who gets that.
Oh my God. First of all, Ohio State would have the easiest freaking path of all time. Okay, we'd start calling them the goddamn 2021 Milwaukee Bucks. If you know, you know. If they had SMU, then Boise State, that would be wild. I think the committee would have to look at that format and think there's something wrong there. I hate that there's an auto buy for champions, which I get, but at the same time, it's like Miami is not that consistent. Like, if I'm getting anybody a buy, I'm getting Oregon a buy, Ohio State a buy if they beat Indiana. Texas, their schedule, I don't even think they deserve a buy,
hmm
but they could get one. And then Penn State, their schedule also, I don't think they deserve a buy, but
I really think that it should be the top 4 overall seeds get that bye, and then those top 5 conference champs, you get an auto bid to the playoffs, so that way that conference championship still means something.
well, I think we should talk about next week, considering the fact that there's a lot of implications on the line, a lot of potentially do or die situations. Most importantly, I think this weekend would be Georgia, Tennessee. Tennessee goes to Georgia. Will be a night game, like we said earlier. I don't know. I really my brain goes to toss up in this game, especially watching Georgia the past few weeks.
Mhm.
Carson Beck has been awful. Tennessee's defense, elite, but their offense has struggled, especially with Nico at quarterback. But the way their offense has been, it's been freaking inside zone, screen, bubble screen, outside zone. You're supposed to be Josh Heupel, you know what I mean? You're supposed to be running a freaking elite offense here. You got an elite defense. You're starting to look like the Hawkeyes out here, man. So I don't know. For me, it's a toss-up game. I kind of lean Georgia just because they're in a do or die situation.
And that's what you've been trained to think for the past
Yeah,
couple years, but
exactly.
at the same time, it's not the same Georgia dominance that we've
Yeah,
seen from
it's
years
definitely a
past.
new era of football that's
Mhm.
just amazing to watch. Oregon at Wisconsin. You and I were kind of talking about this game
Mhm.
earlier.
I
If
just
it's the old Wisconsin, I think we give them a little bit of an edge here.
I mean, who knows? This could be their one game of the year where they're actually good. I just don't see a world where Wisconsin looks competent. They're under year 2 under Luke Fickell. So far, the experiment, if you will, has been pretty uneventful. It hasn't led to any success yet,
Yep.
and honestly, it looks like they've been just trying to tread water, stay afloat from where they're at. Wisconsin can get out, get the defense firing, get an early turnover, get the crowd into that game, put points on the board. They have to put themselves in a position to win. They have to go and take the game. They cannot let the game kind of come to them.
Ohio State goes to Wrigley Field to play Northwestern. I don't think that'll be a contest at
Like
all.
they can't even play it at the dock. Like, I mean, come on, bring it back one more
And
time.
then we got Texas going to Arkansas. That's kind of a sleeper game, to be honest. I mean, I think Texas is about to hit their stride.
hmm
They haven't really played many decent opponents like Florida. They played last week. They freaking killed them. Um, that Georgia game still lurks in the mind for sure. And then we got Penn State at Purdue. If this
This is
was
a this is a game to look out for.
if this was Jeff Brom Purdue,
Oh, absolutely.
all of a sudden we got
Shoot,
something to talk about.
shoot. Let's give us Penn State Louisville, and we'll have some fun. We'll have some
Yeah,
fun
that
with
is true.
that.
That'd be a
but
fun game, actually.
it would be I'd love that. But I mean, like, this week, there's just not really a whole lot to be that has that hype. There's no hype.
Yeah.
But what we've seen so far this year is that when the weeks that don't really have that hype, granted, this is probably the least hype out of all the weeks that we've had. The previous weeks where, there wasn't many marquee matchups,
Yeah.
those were the ones that produced all the
Yeah.
results.
I was gonna say that, like, even on the weeks that there isn't any marquee matchups, something still happens
Mhm,
that really shocks your brain. I also wrote down Utah at Colorado.
mhm,
I kind of wrote this down because if BYU were to somehow slip up,
mhm,
Colorado is in the Big 12 championship game. If somehow Colorado slips in the Big 12 championship and somehow they win, they would be one of the only teams that is not in the top 12 that would be
mhm,
automatically in the playoff because of winning the championship. That I got Boston College at SMU. I put that down because SMU has a chance to slip in, especially with Miami looking shaky as of late. I got Mizzou at South Carolina. I think Mizzou.
Mizzou needs to do something, man. Like, honestly, everyone hates them. I have never seen a collective on the website that shall not be named. I have not seen a single other than a Missouri fan, I have not seen a single good thing about about Missouri football.
It's funny because Eli Drinkwitz was talking about playoff hopes last week after their win. I mean, they're gonna go down the drain at South Carolina, I believe. As far as any other notable games, not really. I got BYU at Kansas, not at Kansas, at home against
Mhm,
Kansas. Kansas beat Iowa State last week, so
mhm,
potentially could knock out BYU. I don't see why not. We got a fun week, guys. We hope you guys enjoyed. This is kind of the first episode back.
mhm,
Uh, we kind of like this format. I like this format. I hope you do too. And we need some ideas to think about. Definitely like rankings or predictions or hot takes or whatever. So you guys make sure to put your comments in down below.
mhm.
Like the show, helps out a ton. Let's go. Week 12 should be a fun week. Hopefully, we see you guys on the other side of the week with some reactions to how the games went.